Yeah, so we'll continue to go over this. The RamZ Paul phenomenon, that he just has the answers. Okay? So we've gone over the fact that RamZ Paul is an expert on the subject of poverty. RamZ Paul is also an expert on the subject of homelessness, that is, as homelessness is an extreme form of poverty. So he's an expert on these things. He doesn't need to provide receipts or any kind of proof of any expertise. All he has to do is just talk on his, he's just an expert. There's no need to question RamZ Paul's expertise on the subject of poverty and the subject of homelessness, right? So he's an expert on poverty and homelessness, right? But he's also an expert based off of his own assessment of the 3 easy steps to address homelessness. You could see that he's an expert on the subject of poverty. He's an expert on the subject of homelessness. But he's also an expert on drug addiction, alcoholism, and recovery from drug addiction and alcoholism, right? And he's also, on top of that, he's also an expert in the field of psychiatry and psychology. Okay? So we'll break this down again. The 3 steps are to removing homelessness is, since most homeless people are just crazy, mentally ill, you'll lock them in insane asylums, and that'll remove like most of the homeless problem right there. Right? And so RamZ Paul is an expert on, psychiatry and psychology. And it's because he's already diagnosed the entire homeless population in the United States of America. And by his professional expertise, he's determined that, most homeless people are mentally ill and need to get locked up in insane asylums. So that's the first step in RamZ Paul's 3-step solution to homelessness. The second step is, whichever ones aren't mentally ill, they're just drug addicts anyways. So lock them up in drug and alcohol, treatment centers. All right? So not only is RamZ Paul an expert on the field of psychology and psychiatry, as he's able to just in one fell swoop diagnose all the homeless people in America, and that give you the rough estimate that most of them are just mentally insane. But he's also an expert in the field of drug and alcohol recovery, right? Because he's already assessed that whatever ones aren't crazy, they're just addicted to drugs and alcohol. And so step 2 is to lock all the drug addicts up with all the crazy homeless people. So you lock up all the homeless people that are mentally ill based off of RamZ Paul's expertise in the field of psychology and psychiatry. Then you lock up all of the homeless people that are addicted to drugs, because, RamZ Paul is an expert on recovery from drugs and alcohol, right? And the other interesting thing is RamZ Paul has never been an addict or an alcoholic, so what experience does he have? Like, wouldn't someone who's recovered from drug and alcohol addiction be more, have more of a, insight into recovery from drug addiction and alcoholism? Is someone who's actually experienced it and gone through it and recovered from drug addiction and alcoholism themselves? Wouldn't that person have more of an expertise than RamZ Paul, who has never been addicted to drugs or alcohol? I don't know, but RamZ Paul, he's the expert, so you'll have to ask him. He's the only one that can answer that question, right? And also, even though RamZ Paul's never been homeless, RamZ Paul is an expert, the expert on homelessness. So even though RamZ Paul has never been homeless, he's an expert on the subject of homelessness. And even though RamZ Paul has never been a drug addict or an alcoholic, RamZ Paul is the expert on how to recover from drug addiction and alcoholism. He's the expert on these things, even though he's never experienced them. You know, I'm an expert aviator. I'm an expert aviator, but I've never flown a plane, but I'm an expert aviator. So you can trust me. I've got all the books. I've got a whole library here of books on aviation. I've read them all. Therefore, I'm an expert. Even though I've never flown a plane, per se, you know, I've never even stepped foot in the cockpit of a fucking plane. But I'm an expert. You can trust me. Yeah. So RamZ Paul is the expert on homelessness, which he's never been homeless, but he's the expert on it. RamZ Paul is also the expert on drug addiction and alcoholism and recovery from drug addiction and alcoholism. Even though RamZ Paul has never been addicted to drugs or alcohol, he's still an expert on it, right? Yeah. And so what else is he an expert in? Well, obviously he's an expert in the field of psychology and psychiatry. To be able to just assess in one fell swoop the entire homeless population and come to the expert conclusion that most of them are just clinically insane and need to be locked up in insane asylums. So, and there's no need to argue with RamZ Paul on this, because RamZ Paul knows he's right. So he's going to tell you what he knows, but he's not going to listen to anything that might, disagree with his expertise. Anybody that could potentially maybe have different views, he's not going to listen to them, because RamZ Paul knows best. Yep. So yeah, I guess RamZ Paul, he's the new leader of the free world. He knows everything. But RamZ Paul is very humble. He won't admit that he thinks that he knows everything. He'll be very humble and say, "Oh, I don't know everything. I'm not saying I know everything. I just know that, I'm an expert in, psychiatry and psychology. I'm an expert in drug addiction and alcoholism and recovery from alcoholism and drug addiction. And I'm also an expert in, the entire subject of poverty and homelessness. But outside of that, hey, just don't know much. I'm just a humble guy." RamZ Paul he's humble. RamZ Paul knows that he doesn't know everything. But so anyway. But, it's very interesting that these guys, they'll just spew this just pure nonsense. And it's just like, whatever. Just like mainstream media. Mainstream media can say the most ridiculous things, and everybody just shrugs their shoulders like, yeah, whatever. That's what they're saying, whatever. Well, it's the same with new tech, big tech, alt tech. They do it's meet the new boss, same as the old boss. They can say just what the fuck ever. It doesn't matter how clueless they are. It doesn't matter how stupid they are. It doesn't matter that the fact is they couldn't think themselves out of a fucking paper bag, let alone, figure out anything regarding the subject of drug addiction, alcoholism, homelessness, poverty, and mental illnesses. These people are mentally ill. They are the mentally ill, drug addicted, basically bums. They're basically bums. Think of Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi is a bum. She's squatting. She's squatting in government buildings. That all you taxpayers pay for her for her luxurious housing. She's a bum that is a parasitical bum that leeches off of all your tax dollars. She is the epitome of a fucking homeless person, but yet she lives in this taxpayer funded housing that is immaculate. Her housing that you pay for is way better than your housing. And she's a bum. She's a leech. And she's mentally ill. She's totally insane. And she's a drug addict and an alcoholic. Do you see anybody coming for her to lock her up in an insane asylum and to force drug and alcohol treatment on her? Do you see any of this? Do you see anyone evicting her from her, her taxpayer-funded fucking housing? No, you don't, do you? Not only do you not see that, you see her continue to thrive, just like Hillary Clinton, another bum, another homeless, mentally ill, drug-addicted piece of fucking garbage that is squatting in taxpayer-funded housing that's luxurious. And none of you people do anything about it, but you're all so concerned that homeless people are drug addicts and homeless people are mentally ill. You're so concerned about that. But when all these leaders, Biden, Trump, Clinton, Pelosi, these endless lineup of just pure parasitical pieces of fucking garbage control your lives, and you're such cowards, you do nothing. But homeless people who are making, by comparison, making little to no impact on your life, and pale in comparison to the Hillary Clintons, the Bidens, the Trumps, the Rothschilds, all these people. You won't ever go after these Clintons, but you make sure to go after those homeless people because they're drug addicts, right? And they're mentally insane. But what about the Biden family and the Trump family and the Pelosi family and the Clintons and the Rothschilds, and the list can go on and on. The Gates family, the Fauci family. Not going to do anything about those people and their mental illness, their chronic, like criminally insane mental illness. Not going to do nothing about that. All the drug addiction with these families, the Pelosi family, all these drug addicts that they own you. They own you. They own your home. They own your fucking towns. They own your counties. They own your cities. They own your states. They're all drug addicts and they're all fucking criminally insane. You're not going to do anything about that. But you're going to make sure that we all cover the topic of the 3 easy solutions to remove the criminally insane and the drug addicts from the streets. But as far as from political offices and places of power, judges, lawyers, police officers, doctors, all these other people, politicians that are drug addicts and criminally insane, don't worry about them. They're only mandating clot shots and any and everything else under the sun. Like, do you see homeless people mandating clot shots? No. But don't worry about the people in power that are all drug addicted, mentally insane, criminally insane, and total bums. Do any of these people work for their housing? No, they steal it all from you. Don't worry about them. What you want to focus on is all those homeless people that are panhandling in the streets. They're all mentally ill, criminal, vagrant drug addicts. Those are the people you want to go after, not the Pelosi family, not the Fauci family, not the Clintons. No, not the Biden family, not the Trump family. No, not the Rothschilds. No, the Gates family. No, you want to go after the homeless people. There you go. Now you're really thinking. Now you're really awake. Aren't you glad that you've been awakened to the truth now? Isn't it a wonderful thing? Well, it's time to get to work. Gather up your pitchforks. It's time to go find all those drug addicts that are homeless drug addicts so we can force them into asylums, and all the homeless people that are mentally ill. Gather your fork. What do you call them? Pitchforks. Gather up all your pitchforks. Don't even look at the Pelosi family, the Biden family, the Clinton family, the Gates family, the Rothschilds family, the Fauci family, and the list goes on and on. Don't even look at them. Wake up. Put on your They Live sunglasses. Become John Nada. Get your pitchforks and go find all those drug-addicted homeless people and force them into asylums. Gather up your pitchforks. Go out into the street. Find all those mentally ill homeless people and force them into asylums. It's time to stand up for yourselves. Don't look at the mentally ill drug addiction of the Pelosi family. Don't look at the criminally insane drug addict degeneracy of the Clintons and the Biden family and the Trump family and the Gates family and the Fauci family and don't even look the homeless. Wake up. Wake up to the red pill, you guys. Wake up.